Right. Now, hopefully, y'all can hear me fine. If not, that would be kind of stupid if you couldn't. But let me double check that. This is my first time using OBS in quite a while. So let me quickly just double check and make sure that everything, is working nice. I'll just like open the stream up on my phone or whatever and double check. You're just, you can never be too safe. Uh, Let me check real quick. Oh, hello. In chat, I see you. Uh, there we go. Okay. I just opened up my phone real quick to make sure that everything's going right. All right. Well, I guess it's time to get started. So in, for context for why I'm doing this stream, in a few previous videos, I mentioned that I have a save of NIMBY rails where I've built sort of my dream Norwegian railway system. It's still very much a work in progress, but that is on the fantasy side at least. Everything that I have that already exists is done. So if I put up the game, by the way, it's a very modded save, and it is a very big game. Hopefully my PC doesn't die while I'm trying to do this. But yeah, there's a lot going on here. Uh, yeah, so for starters, we have, well, actually, I think I'll start with over here. We have the B-bomb in Bergen, which, oh, I'll pause the game. Uh, it's very neat system. I've been on it many times. I've explored all the lines, the videos on my channel about it, but I have it in its current state recreated here. I'll eventually get to adding the planned extensions to, where is it, down to Loddefjord and up to Åsane, but that will come when the time is. To touch on the other train system that Norway has, with other light rail-ish, smaller light rail system at least, I did add the one in Trondheim. Uh, I might do something with it eventually, but for now it's just staying as it is. And then jumping all the way down to Oslo, we have the trains and we have, or the metro trains, and we have the trams fully represented here in game. Once again, this is a modded save, so there's quite a lot of extra stuff going on here. So for the trains themselves, for example, the Oslo trams, I've used what is technically not in, or technically not fully inaccurate, but for the modern day it is. These are the SL95 trams, and they're the only Oslo tram that is available on the workshop right now. They were retired, I think last year actually, or maybe it was the year before. Uh, and now it's all these calf trams, the Urbos model. But the Trondheim ones are accurate and the Bergen ones are accurate. And then for the Oslo Metro trains, those are also represented in game fully accurately. Uh, the one thing about this, and when I say recreate this network accurately, there's a big asterisk there, and that is I wanted to try my best to not have to timetable, like go into schedule mode, because the schedule mode in this game, anyone who's worked with it will know that the this mode is such a pain to work with. So I've tried my best to make everything sort of use the automatic scheduling in game. So that often means very precise changes to make sure that everything is working properly. So very precise little like start times for your schedule because the way the timetables work is everything's on a 24-hour system. So you have to make sure that the amount of runs that each line has is evenly divisible by 24. Otherwise, you're going to have a period where all your trains are just holding for like an hour at a station, and that's not fun. But so what I've had to make a concession here, and that is that line five, the double loop, is sadly not represented here. Uh, there would be a way I could technically get it if I somehow figured out a way because the trains don't want to use the turning track here for some reason. They don't want to use the pocket track here. Uh, I've tried to get them to, and they just will not unless I add like an extra station in here somehow, but or not somehow, but if I could, but that would be kind of annoying to work with and also kind of messes up with the labels and everything. That would be the ideal option. I might do that, but what I'd have to do is I'd have to make line five trains basically turn, use the pocket track, end at Sturu, and then have sort of like a line 5B or a line six that goes from Sinsen and also use the pocket track to turn up to Songsuan. So for now, line five is just Destiny to out to Songsuan. But yeah, so that's most of what I wanted to say about or the sort of like rapid transit, like trams, metros, and stuff like that. But the real bread and butter of this map is the mainline rails. Uh, when I say that this map took absolutely forever to just get the existing network put in, let alone stuff that's planned and or just crammed on as fantasy, and even then, what's been added is still very much work in progress. Uh, but yeah, it took me about I was playing the game every day for like I want to say 3, 4 hours in the summer of last year, and it took about a month or two to just to get the current rail system in. Uh, and then on top of that, I added in like little existing rails that are only for freight right now, but I would add or reinstate passenger service too. Uh, so as an example for one of those, you have the line between Rakestad and Sarpsborg. I tried to think about where stations would be or considering where they used to be. So we have one at Isa, and then I decided to add one here for Judskogen, the racetrack here. So this might end up being some kind of like limited service special event station, but considering that you have stations on the rest of the network, like for example, if I go out to like Hallingskeid, which yeah, that's the catchment area for the station is the not the catchment area population, but like the population, not just within the catchment, but the population that will use the station at all, I believe. So that's 100 people for Hallingskeid, and then I think there's some worse offenders here. If I go up to like the film line, yeah, those stations yet, but it is a tourist line, so yeah. But you have stations like here. Yosemite here has zero apparently. So the but adding all of these extra sort of stops in, I had to sort of when I was crowning at least, I had to think about well, especially when it came to lines that because when you have lines that are already closed or that already have the tracks there and that used to have passenger service, like the one that goes through down here from Rakestad to Sarpsborg, I was it's a bit easier to think about where stations would be. But once you're getting into your fully crowned on lines, then it gets quite a bit harder. So, as an example, we have this line here, which is sort of like an orbital circumferential that I have designed from Drammen, where it goes out through Spikkestad. So basically, not exactly reactivating the old alignment, but basically it kind of follows it up until this point, and then it's kind of greenfielded a bit, so there's going to be a bit of eminent domain with that. But and then it goes down through Gröbach. Uh, this, by the way, this tunnel here, this is probably one of like the single. I am like so proud of getting this tunnel in because this is probably something that I put so much of my own personal research into this because with NIMBY rails, you don't have like actual like height elevations. It's like -1, -2, -3, and then minus infinite. So, and those aren't like certain depths below ground. That's just layers of -1 is, well, there's no underground track that's going to go below it or above it, I mean. And then minus infinite, no underground track will go below it. So it's not like a set height. So when I looked at this and I was like, is this feasible to do, considering the depth of the water here? So this tunnel, at least on this side, is basically designed to like the most acceptable gradient and like the distance, the length of the tunnel that it would have to be to get down to the depth that the station would need to be at, or this crossing would need to be at. So this entire distance here, I put way too much research into that. Another thing that I put a lot of research into was to my Norwegians probably know about the Haukeli line, which is the proposed high-speed rail route between Oslo and Stavanger, and also up to Haugesund. Uh, there is luckily a plan for this map, like a very, very detailed alignment map uh, of this route all the way from Bergen and Stavanger out to basically right by Kongsberg. And then from there, I had to kind of just do a bit of like guessing. So you end up with sort of like this connection here, which is I'm not sure how feasible this would be. I might need to. A lot of this map is going to need to be tweaked. There was quite a few stuff that actually needed to be like changed because of the fact that it's running on NIMBY rails, so that makes it slightly less accurate in real life. For example, before I added the Oslo trams and the Oslo Metro to the system, there was such because the people don't take frequency of the trains into account when the AI like passengers, not like the real like the they're not even like model, they're just like numbers. But they don't take into account that the frequency of the line as much. So what I kept noticing was that I would I would basically have over like every single train on the RE30 and the R31 leaving Oslo S would be completely full, and then it would be almost entirely empty by the time it reached Skjærtoft, because people were using these stops as they're using the train to get to these stops because I hadn't put the metro in yet. So what I had to do is I had to create a temporary L3 service just to get that with I added like a little siding here. I think it's still there at Cheslos that that train would use to reverse just to get like take the crush off of the other two lines. But once I added the metro, I got rid of it. Another example is when it comes to frequency for this game. Without going into timetable mode, which I've tried again, I'm trying my best to avoid. So what that means is that I've had to double track for sections that aren't double tracked in real life. And for example, this line, the line, I think all the way to Egersund, I think there might be a gap or two, but if I remember right, I think it's all the way from Stavanger to Egersund is double tracking this. And I'm probably going to go back and tweak that because I do want that route should be double tracked eventually, but I'm probably going to go back and tweak that and see if there's a way to do it a bit better. Because the way I did it was I didn't sort of use like the modern Norwegian railway double tracking method of just building an entirely new alignment. I just sort of added on a parallel track to existing sections. So you have these like pretty sharp curves that are still uh, or that are still in place that didn't get straightened out because I just added a parallel track to it instead of actually changing the alignment. So I will go back and fix that eventually. The other thing is the other line that I definitely need to fix alignments for is this part of this sort of like South Coast high-speed rail line between Egersund and Kristiansand. I need to fix this alignment, especially this egregious section here where I just went the assumption of, yeah, we're just gonna bore it straight through the mountain here. It's just pretty much all tunnel and with a few bridges because of the elevations. But yeah, I definitely need to go back and fix that. Okay, I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a prompt here so that I'm not, just rambling on and jumping between lines. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna open my line manager and we're gonna look at every line here in order, line by line, in the order that it's been sorted here at least. So kind of alphabetical, not really, but still somewhat alphabetical. So, of course, we have the Vatican V-Bond line 1. This time, by the way, isn't a one trip, this is round trip time. So, and I'm using accurate trams for this. I think it's because I have stop timing, the default stop time set to like 10 seconds, which is a bit optimistic. But yeah, so it thinks a round trip on that line could take an hour and 12 minutes, which is like between 30, 45 minutes each direction, which is semi-accurate. It's a bit faster than real life, but definitely possible still. Uh, and this line would, or this line basically uses same alignment it does as in real life, uh, including the fact that it turns around beyond the station here at Fiestan. Sadly, you can't in the game at the moment unless you make these two tracks their own separate station. You can't add like a secondary track option so that if this track is full, the train can instead turn around using this one. Unless there's a station, you can't do that, which kind of sucks, but oh well. By the way, the fares in this game, since I'm playing sandbox mode, I kind of just gave up and just stopped caring. So everything's distance based because I don't want people paying like $8 to take a train one stop. Or if they do like a series of like transfers where they take a bunch of lines only for one stop and they'd end up if you didn't have it distance based, then they'd end up paying the base price for every single train. And that would cost a lot. So everything's distance based and also ridiculously cheaper than real life. Like fantastically cheaper. Uh, but I'm playing sandbox mode, so finances really don't affect the score or what I'm planning to do that much. So I have 12 trains on this line, and because it runs or a round trip takes 72 minutes, if I go to auto run line here, it'll show that the interval is every 6 minutes automatically, which is ever so slightly better than the every 7 minutes it is today. So moving down, we have line 2 of the Bergen-Bibahn. This line, again, is basically the same as real life, but there is a key difference here, or kind of key difference. For a while, they didn't use the second platform here at Kaigaten to unload and this one to load, but now they do that. So I represented that in game. This shows a round trip on this line taking 36 minutes, which means it's an 18-minute trip each direction, which is actually, I think, ever so slightly longer than real life. But I think that's just because I've rounded it out to be a nice even number. And because obviously in real life, you're not accounting for the time that the train has to hold at the terminal from when it arrives. So yeah, 6 trains on this line, so it's also every 6 minutes. And then these are timetabled so that they're about as evenly spread apart as they can be uh, in the shared section. So that way there's not bunching and trains don't delay each other. So then moving on to one of our two filler slash placeholder services, because this map is big enough as it is, this Norway project is big enough as it is, it would literally like triple in size in terms of like, or like kind of actually, not triple, but maybe like slightly more than double in size if I, actually no, triple if I added Sweden to it, because Sweden has a lot of sort of cross-sectional rail lines, and Norway's line doesn't go very far north, or as far north as the country does, that is. where in Sweden they go very, very far. It also goes much further south, so there's more land to cover. Yeah, so it would definitely increase the size a lot, which would not only kill my PC, but also, just take forever to do. So I might do it as a separate project eventually at some point, maybe get started on it. I don't know. But because I don't want to do it on this one map, because otherwise my game would probably crash if I tried, we have placeholder services. So these are represented as the F1 and the F2, which are nicely color coded. I've made sure that all the SJ services, not to be confused with the SJ Nord services, but the SJ services are represented in black. They're on the map. Again, the ticket price, I just kind of threw up a random number when I started, and I've sort of just stuck with that sort of similarly, like with like a hierarchy system for modes. So you have like, I don't know. Uh, again, I didn't really concern myself with ticket prices. This line I have as it's just one train running it, and it goes slightly over the border to Charlottenberg, mainly because otherwise it would just be duplicating the R14, and that would kind of no one would use it otherwise. And also, I wanted to include the border stations in some way. Oh, there is one line that I have not added actually that is in Norway in real life. And that is a line from Narvik to the Swedish border, but I will also do that eventually. Uh, so this line uses one train, again, like I already said, and that makes it every three, yes, every 3 hours, which is actually better than real life. Real life, it's only a couple times a day. But I'm assuming obviously it doesn't run that frequently in real life because of probably needs and also restrictions on like how frequently line can run on single track sections, especially further in Sweden. Uh, so this line uses, are these the Bombardier trains, the X, I want to say X50, I might be wrong. My number here is wrong because I originally had this as a local hauled set with an RC6, so the train still says RC6 even though I've replaced it. Let me actually double check what it is because it's going to drive me crazy. Yes, X50. I think it's just one of these. X50, maybe X55, I think. Yeah, I want to say it's the X55. So that's why I'm running on that. And these do run online in real life. They also have local hauled sets that run as well. So yeah, that's that line. It's just a short little placeholder line. I've also made it for the long distance trains. I've decided to make it or slightly more accurate to real life, where when you get closer to like when you get to like the more frequent stops by a major city, it's only like going away from the city, it's boarding only, and going into the city, it's leaving only, so that people don't use the inner city trains to commute, uh, or commute short distances. That is. So moving on, we have the F2, and the F2 is our it goes down to Hudden. It basically entirely duplicates the RE20, but like I talked about, and actually in my first ever video on fixing the roads in Norway, where I talked about what I wanted to do with the what I want to do with the lines around the Oslo area, I talked about how the RE20 has a variant of it called the RX20, which is like a rush hour only service. Or I don't know if it's actually rush hour, it might be limited service. But basically, the trains that are designated as RX20 are the trains that skip Viggendoda. Otherwise, they're basically identical. So I've just taken that, made it into a new service called the F2 to better differentiate it. And also, so this line is black because in theory, this would continue further into Sweden. In real life, I know this is operated by V, but if I'm being honest, the only reason I have this as an SJ service on the map is because I wanted at least one train using the X2000s. So you have an X2000 on here running the line to Hugden. All right, because there is no F3, because that line designated 3 to line up to Gjøvik, and that line is not long enough for a super long distance intercity train. It's onto the F4. So this line, um, I actually don't know how I got the frequency as high as it is. This is every 2 hours on this, which is ridiculous. I don't think this would be plausible in real life, especially after opening a high-speed line here, but the boy can dream. So this line, again, starts in Bergen, goes up basically the existing line through Voss, through Myrdal, all the way out to Hønefoss, and then it uses the proposed Ringerike line to be able to stop at, well, it has to use this weird like junction they've engineered into it, where it can also go stop at Hønefoss without having to, without bypassing it, that is, so that there's more transfer opportunities. And then it basically uses the Ringerike line to get into Oslo, joining back the main line at Sandvika and then ending in Oslo S. This route is a 12-hour round trip, which is slightly better than real life. And as for the trains on this route, if I go to F4, what do we have? We have the new Stadler intercity trains that are being designed currently. I'm not even sure if they're under, if any of them are actually being like physically built yet, but the contract has been approved. And these will replace a lot of the local halt sets, but I do have a few of them still sort of running. I originally had these with the regular coaches, but there was a mod that adds these Talgo coaches, and I just added them to these trains because they have a higher top speed. So that is so that it doesn't hold up the line, or slow other trains down, that is. So with that being said, give me a second real quick. Let me just do something real quick. So, all right, I'm back. Sorry about that. But with that being said, I would like it if the trains, if I could use the existing rolling stock, but when it comes to the scheduling of these trains, because I don't want to use the schedule mode, I have to make everything as precise as possible, and that means that every train needs to be running at a similar speed through the higher speed sections. So if I have these trains limited to a slower speed because of rolling stock, then that will negatively impact the whole line. So yeah, aside from the Ringerike line, this line is basically unchanged from its current state. Now we have the F5. Uh, this is another one, or this one actually has been changed. So this line now uses a new line between Kristiansand and not Oslo S, but and basically Drammen, technically Skien because the Vestfold line already exists, but you know, uh, it then uses the Grenland line, the proposed cutoff here, which actually connects up with the regular tracks in right around here. But in my plan, because I've added a Sørland high-speed line, it now goes down here and actually goes to places instead of, taking the inland route. The only reason I did that is because, as I'll show later, I have replaced the existing line between Drammen and Kristiansand with the regional train, as well as the branch to Kragerø. Uh, but because I couldn't really, or didn't really think it would be viable to do that between Egersund and Kristiansand, I just have the F5 using its existing route, and then the high speed trains using the other route, or the newer route. Moving on, we have the F6. This one doesn't have a high speed version yet. I'm working on it, and by that I mean I'm trying to look at plans and figure out where exactly this would run, and kind of just see how how viable it would be to add in. I'm thinking it would go up through this valley here and sort of go down the valley the Rhodes line uses because it's wider and has more room, and then sort of come off here-ish and sort of run more in a more straight path through Teenset? Is that how you say it? And then up the valley here to basically where, what is this, Bedquark? And then basically just make a higher speed alignment of this, or make this into a higher speed alignment, as well as line up through here. But again, I'm still in a very rough draft phase of this, so I need to figure something out. But yeah, so the F6 is actually pretty much unchanged. For some reason, I don't know why. I'm looking at this now and how ridiculous this looks that I have all these intercity trains running every 2 hours. Uh, it's mainly because I did a lot of double tracking work and it was kind of just whatever I could fit into the timetable without clogging everything up. But yeah, this line uses or the newer, like the Megan line. I have it. I'm not sure if I have any local outlets in this. I think I have Type 73s, which are the long distance trains. Let me see where it's 6. Yeah, I have some Type 73s, and then I have the proposed Stadler trains, or the under development Stadler trains running on this. And this is an SJ Nord line. I forgot to mention what the F5 what it uses. It uses a local hauled sets in Type 73s. Mainly because I don't know why I didn't put. Now I'm thinking about it, I actually don't know why I didn't put any of the new Sadler trains on this. Should probably do that. But I'll do that when I'm done talking about all these lines. So F7, this has you'll notice right away when I click this train that it has an electric locomotive, and that is because this line would get electrified eventually. Like I talked about in my part 3 of fixing Norway's railways, I think they should straighten the alignment and sort of fix the alignment of this line before they electrify it. I am a hypocrite though, so in NIMBY rails I haven't actually done that. I just built the actual alignment and then just replace the trains with electric trains at some point. Uh, I will eventually get to training out, like I said, but for now it's a bit unrealistic. But this line is, or F7, let me click it actually. It just goes up to not to Huda from Trondheim, and it's basically the existing route. Then you have an addition, the F8, which right now I have it in Fauske, but I might extend it down from 9 and goes up to Narvik. Uh, uses a partially constructed rail alignment for part of it, and then for sort of like the second part, I kind of just did a bit of guesswork and kind of like it's similar in alignment to like if you look at like the Söderland line, the way that they built that, where they have like these long tunnel sections and then these windy little parts. I might straighten it out actually because it is a bit, you know, slow, but I think it just looks a bit more realistic on the map. That's why I did it. But yeah, I'm definitely revising that. And it will get extended up to Tromsø eventually. So, next up, we have the Airport Express, which is the free tour guys. You have the free one, which is exactly as it is currently, albeit actually fully with the CAF trains. So the Type 71s are sadly gone on the Airport Express. But you know, that's kind of why they would replace them. But yeah, these the this line is pretty much accurate to real life every 40 minutes because the trains leave the airport in Oslo every 20 minutes. And just like in real life, when you're going from the airport, you can only exit at all the other stations, and when you're going to the airport, you can only board at all the other stations. So you can basically only use it to get to and from the airport, which is pretty smart. But so basically gets a lot of airport exclusive ridership because the two airport lines get very high. I've seen on multiple occasions these trains get be full before even leaving the airport. So, well, obviously because they can't board anymore. But my point is they get very high use. These so just like real life, this is every 40 minutes because combined it's every 20. And it's entirely the CAF trains. And you have the Fleet 2, which I made a bit of a change to. Instead of ending at Stabæk and using the sort of like mini yard at Høvik to turn around, which I do have lines using, by the way. This line, I've extended it to Sandefjord, so that we can get like an airport to airport connection going here. So it adds an extra stop in, it adds extra stops, obviously in Asker and Drammen, and then I think it's straight to from there. I don't know. Does it stop at Sudden? No, it doesn't. So it's straight to Horten, which is the planned or under. I think is it actually open yet? I don't know. It was supposed to open last year. I don't know if it actually did. I didn't get a chance to check. Uh, so yeah, it stops there, then it stops in Times and then obviously at the Torp Airport, and then Sandefjord. So this one's actually every 45 minutes, so it's like every 22 and a half minutes combined with the other line. Mainly because I couldn't evenly divide by 40, which is a bit annoying, but oh well. And then sort of jumping back up because of the way that I've named the routes, when you do it, when it sorts them alphabetically automatically. So we just randomly jump up from airport express trains to the tram in Trondheim. This is basically exactly as it is in real life. It runs every 15 minutes, uh, which is how it does in real life. And yeah, it's just accurate alignment, accurate trains too. Let me find them. There we go. These little units. The one thing that isn't accurate about this line is that I realized only after building the entire line, I remembered, oh yeah, this thing uses narrow gauge. And I didn't have at the time installed narrow gauge tram track mods, but I do have it now, and I might go back and just replace all the track on the line, which is, a bit annoying to notice right after finishing building the line that you didn't build it in the right gauge. But so for now, it's just a bit wide for the trams, like it just looks a bit off than usual, but I'll go back and fix it. Which someone count how many times I've said that so far. All right, moving on to our first high-speed train. You have the H4. You'll notice right away this uses the line I talked about earlier that goes through Drabak and Spekestad out of Oslo So it goes out of Oslo via Ski. And even though it is slightly longer to do that, the reason I have that being done is because this section here, the Vierdosen Tunnel, and really the Asker line is just so packed with trains that it just uses this because there's less trains using it. The one downside is there is no bypasses on this line. So there is a regional train that uses this line that we'll get to later, uh, that does stop at all these stations, but this train doesn't. So it is scheduled to where it doesn't have to, or it doesn't get delayed by the regional train, but it was a bit hard to schedule. Uh, yeah, so this uses the Hercules line basically, leaves the existing line right after, what is this, Mjøndalen, and then it's full purpose built, high speed running all the way up to Bergen, um, through Haukidal and up through Odda, and then joins the existing line right by Trengereid, which I think this alignment is similar to what they're going to do for the actual double tracking of this line, uh, to up to Vaxdal, which is planned currently. But yeah, this train uses modded trains. I think my mic just disconnected. Hold on. Is that why everything's been going? Yeah, my mic just disconnected. Oh well. All right, we'll have to do this micless. So the audio quality you might see is noticeably worse, but yeah. So down this line goes up through Oda here, and uses these. I don't know, does it still use them? Yeah, it still uses these Siemens Volaro trains, which I have tried my best using the custom color palette to make look as V as possible. I'm not sure. I think I did a pretty good job with the color scheme. I think it is pretty accurate, but again, with the livery patterns the game gives you, there's only so much you can do with this. So yeah, this line stops. Let me actually go through the stops here. This line has stops. Bergen Arna, Tisse, Jundal, Oda, Røldal, Haukeligrand, Åmot i Vinje, Brynkeberg, Notodden, which is not to be confused with the existing Notodden station, which is actually in Notodden, not on the top of a mountain like the one in the official plan is. but you know, whatever. Uh, Drammen, She, and then Oslo. And this line has a variant, EH4X, which is nonstop Bergen to Oslo, and it gets it done in, if you take away the waiting time at the stations, at the terminals, it is 90 minutes to Oslo from Bergen, which would kill the airline market in Norway, actually, now that I think about it. Oh my goodness, that is amazing. We should build this thing. All right, moving on to another train that uses Polar train sets by Siemens. If I go to the H5, these I tried my best to do like a go-ahead-esque livery, but it's not as good because the go-ahead livery is slightly more complicated. So the H5 uses this new Söderland line that actually goes through all the cities. This line also uses the regular main line out of Oslo S instead of using the one that the H4 uses, and goes up to Stavanger via this new main line and the Vestfold line and the Grenland line. And this line, so there's a bunch of waypoints on this line, mainly so that it would actually use certain double track sections because for some reason it just didn't want to do it. So I had to do it manually. So it stops in Egersund, Flekkefjord, Lyngdal, Mandal, Kristiansand, Gjerde, really? Yeah, then Gjerde, then Sandefjord. Oh yeah, because the F5 makes the local stops between Kristiansand and where's this? And Gjerde, which is up here. So the F5, the existing route uses this line and makes the local stops in Tvedestrand, Arendal, Grimstad, and I think was the Lillesand, yeah. So and then after Gjerde, on this line, it's Sandefjord, Drammen, Asker, Oslo S. Then there's the H5E, which is a version of this line that is, it's not quite an express, not quite an H5X, because it makes one intermediate stop at Kristiansand. Stavanger, Kristiansand, Oslo S. Then for the real high-speed line, that one uses the Haugeli line. And that one goes from just straight Stavanger to Oslo S, just like the one from Bergen, does it in just under 90 minutes, or just over 90 minutes, which is incredible. Again, I can't stress enough how much of a necessity it is, or how much necessity would be to get this line done, and how useful this would be. Like, oh my goodness, that would be so great. But yeah, and this is using realistic speeds too. So using Siemens Volaro sets, that is, and and taking into account the track geometry of this route. So that's really good. Moving on, we have, because of the way the line or the Hercules line is designed, it has this triangle here. It has one here, and then it has one here for Haugesund. So now you have a bunch of like smaller high-speed services. You have the H10, which is Bergen to Stavanger. You have the H10X, which is a direct Bergen to Stavanger because this one has intermediate stops, or the other one has intermediate stops. You have the H101 and the H102, which are Bergen to Haugesund and Stavanger to Haugesund, respectively. And all of those use the same Siemens Volaro trains as the rest of the fleet. So, moving on, we have finally, moving on to our local services. And I mean, like, yeah, finally, we're on our local trains. We have the L1. Let me put this away real quick. There we go. So, the L1 is is, as we know, is pretty much unchanged from its current state between Lillestrøm and Spikkestad. Uh, yeah, it is basically the existing L1. The only change is really with the trains. So for this line, I have it using, I think I still have it using the refurbed Type 72s, which is accurate, some semi-accurate to real life. Will, it might use the new Alstom trains, but for now I just have it using that. The L2 is also accurate to real life. You'll notice that it says it starts in Hervik, but it doesn't really, because that is a no passenger stop, because it stops at Stabæk, and then it just uses the center tracks of Hervik to sort of like uses as like a extended tail track, and that's basically unchanged in real life between Stabak and She. The L2X sadly did not make the cut. It and basically the reason for that is because of the exact same problem it has in real life, where well, it just causes delays. It constantly gets held behind other trains, and it fits very awkwardly into the timetable. So I just couldn't have it on here. Oh yeah, just like all the local trains I forgot to mention are every 30 minutes. Uh, and if I go down to the L2, see what that uses, I have the new awesome Caradia trains. I have, as a little Easter egg, I have one in an NSB livery instead of a V livery, which it probably would wear. Then I have two Type 69 trains because those are my favorite trains of all time that have ever existed. So it would be a crime to not include them somewhere in this, considering that they're basically almost all gone now, or at least almost all gone compared to what they used to be, or how prevalent they used to be like 10 years ago. Moving on, you have the shortest local line, the L4, which is entirely unchanged from its current state. Every 30 minutes, I think in real life it's actually close to every 20, but I had to up it to every 30, sadly, because, well, I mean, I did increase the frequency of the other regional trains through here, so it's not as bad, but I had to up it because it just wouldn't fit in well with the timetable to have it every 20. So this uses a single Type 75 train, which is accurate to real life. Moving on, we have the L5, which is our Stavanger to Egersund local train. Also, basically unchanged from real life and uses entirely Type 72 trains with as a little Easter egg because this is a future map. I had to include one of the current state trains, so like the pre-refurb. All right, moving on, we have the L6, which is new. It is Sturden to Stjørdal, and it's you could say it's kind of long for a local train, but I thought it still fit. So I talked about this in my video about or my second part of the Fix Norway's Railways series about sort of consolidating some of the services because the service patterns here, like the service designations around Trondheim, make no sense because all the trains have variants to their routes. So this is part of that consolidation, is this L6. And with the electrification works, the L6 here uses Alstom Karadia train, and not a Type 76, but a Type 75, because as of right now, I believe actually this line is fully electrified. Um, then you have the L7, which is, I believe, Levanger to, and then does like to also down to that's the L6. The L7 is Levanger to Trondheim via Lerkendal. So kind of like does a hook shape here to reach Trondheim. Mainly because I just wanted to use this line, and so that the Lerkendal branch would get more use. Although it does also get branched by the used by the R71 out to Meråker. So the L7 uses Coredia trains, and it uses Alstom. It uses Coredia trains, and it uses I forget what they're called. And it uses the Sabbath the Type 75s. I actually now very sadly have to go. So we will